Mic test, mic test. Okay, great. Thank you so much for making it out on this very steamy, kind of passive-aggressive rainy day. And for those of out there who just quit smoking to come in, thank you even more. Now, for many of you, you obviously see on the screen Believe Distribution Services. But what's very fascinating and interesting is that Believe, you're lucky to have one great brand, but they've got two huge brands in their umbrella. And so the first question I want to throw at you, Dennis, is in addition to Believe, you guys now own and operate TuneCore. And how would you sort of describe whether it be the differences or perhaps even the synergies between these two great brands in the international independent distribution music space?
Well, good afternoon. It's we've always seen like the music industry as a pyramid where essentially you have a lot of developing artists and very few top artists, but everybody is part of the same ecosystem. So the way we've built and thought about Believe is we want to be able to provide solutions and services to each artist, because there are developing artists that will be top stars tomorrow, and there will be top stars that will progressively decline. So our view is we want to be able to provide services to everybody. And in order to do so, we have starting at the bottom of the pyramid, we started building TuneCore, which essentially addresses today about 2 million independent artists around the world at early stages of development. And then we've built other layer of service. Believe is the distribution brand for artists and labels that are already very structured. And then at the very top, we've developed artist and services or label brands by genre of music, like Naival, Points, and others, with specific expertise in each genre of music and in each geography. So it's really, the logic is being able to provide full solutions to everybody at, for TuneCore, it's purely technology solutions, and all of the way up, this becomes very high touch, human touch, A&R driven organization, but that allows us to work with developing artists all over the way to very top Billboard charted artists.
So for the football fans out there, would it be safe to say Division I, Premier League, and Champions League is sort of the setup?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah,
good enough.
Good analogy.
All right. The next question is, you know, Dennis, you're a very modest guy, and the few times I've had coffee or drinks with you, you've never bragged once, but this is a fact that I think is definitely worth sort of shouting about. But according to the BuzzAngle Music 2017 U.S. report, both Believe Digital and TuneCore combined basically came in just behind Universal, Sony, and Warner, and ahead of the indie label services divisions of each of these majors. And in fact, TuneCore was named Indie Distributor of the Year. I mean, you guys had a phenomenal year, which basically, at least in the US market, would have made you the #1 indie music distributor in the #1 market in the world. How did that happen? And more importantly, where do you see Believe moving forward from this sort of milestone and benchmark?
Well, the right now our estimate is we generate anywhere between 8 to 10% of market share globally, and we think that makes us the 4th largest music company in the world in terms of digital recorded music revenues, and that varies a lot in territories. Like in Asia, for example, our market share is actually much higher than this, and we're very often larger than some of the historical major record labels. And the way we've achieved this is really the vision I was just describing, which is when you have, when your objective is to provide the right level of service to the right artist in the industry, you are in a position where we can provide services that are being adopted by millions of artists, 12 million of artists contribute to market share. And when we've built labels with really high quality engineering, we can also serve top local artists. So there's markets where we have as much as 30–35% market share. We work with 4 or 5 of the top 10 local artists because we've built these services, and that's really our focus has really been on providing the right mix of technology services, marketing expertise, and teams, people in engineering, marketing, with the right expertise to support the artists and the labels that we distribute. So all of these things, when you measure them in terms of market share, contribute to the market share, but it's just the result of us being successful in serving these different categories of artists, where companies, major labels, typically are absolutely not set up to work with many developing artists. That's not the core business. So our view of the industry, music industry, being a comprehensive industry from development all the way to top artists has contributed to us growing faster than any other player in the space.
So I noticed in one of the empty chairs, you brought one of the Believe tote bags, and it has numerous cities written on it. How many markets or countries is Believe currently available? And more importantly, who would you list as the top 3 music markets for you guys based on market share?
I would say we're currently in about 40 countries around the world. And when I say 40 countries, it's with teams on the ground. Obviously, we operate with digital distribution all around the world, but our view has always been that to provide the proper level of service, we need the right people first, and we need the right people to be close to the artists and the labels we work with. So we've always been very, at the core of our development, very attached to having local offices in each market. So as markets have developed, we've deployed all around the world. Europe historically was the first territory where we deployed, and we're still very strong in countries like France or Germany or the UK. We built the US with TuneCore, and we've deployed Latin America, Asia. Asia, I would say today, is all across the fastest growing region in the world for us, from India to China, all the way from Indonesia to Singapore. And it's the fastest growing because of the adoption of music services, the strength of YouTube, the adoption of streaming services, Spotify, these are across the territories, is very strong. And so we've seen very strong uptake. And these are investment right now across Asia. We have over 70 people around. We are anticipating that in the coming year, we will hire about 50 more people in the region to help support local artists, local labels. And it's a very strong territory of investment. The US always remains a strong territory of investment. Globally, the way we think about the market, when you look at, as we speak today, there's less than 2% of the population in the world that has a paid subscription. If you look at the most advanced countries in the world, Scandinavia, now you have about 35% of the population that has a paid subscription. So it tells about the growth potential that the market has ahead in the coming 10 years, and we want to make the investment to serve artists, labels in the transition and in that new phase of the music industry.
Now, given that now globally, independent combined, it has the #1 market share in the recorded music sales space, and obviously you guys have done very well. There are a lot of bigger artists now who are defiantly and very proudly independent. Who would you sort of point out as maybe 3 very successful Believe clients that have either gone on to, astonishing commercial success or critical acclaim. If you had to sort of pick two or three highlights from last year.
Well, I would say it's, I can give you a couple of names, but I would say it's, overall, it's really a general trend that we're seeing where most of the artists, we go in a world where the artists were empowered to self-produce more and more with the likes of YouTube, with the subscription services. The artists are being empowered to self-market. Before, you had to go to television, we had to go to radio to be able to break artists. Now, in any given week, in the markets around the world, we're going to have 2, 3 top 10 Billboard charted artists everywhere. And essentially, a lot of these artists are younger artists that fully understand how digital works, that make the most of YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music to drive and build their audiences over time. And so we see more and more of these successes. And like the examples I can take is in France right now, we've distributing one of the artists, which is right now the biggest European, the most streamed European artist. There's actually 2 hip-hop artists there. One is, his name is Jul. It's about, J-U-L, it's about 800 million streams per year for the artist. PNL, we've got with Chance the Rapper and TuneCore in the US and others, but I would say next week there's going to be other examples. There's going to be examples in Asia, across the world. So it's a big trend that we're seeing, and what we anticipate is that overall the indie market share will keep building up and increasing because we see these artists being able to achieve success on their own.
So you mentioned that in France you have the urban artist Jul, and then in the US, Chance the Rapper. If you had to maybe pick one artist in Asia that has really broken out and broken through vis-a-vis through working with Believe, is there an artist that comes to mind that through the platform, through the infrastructure, and through the services was able to get traction, not just across, but more importantly, beyond Asia?
I would say not yet, not that we've seen yet. It is something that we're working on. What we see, and I would say not yet as much as we've not seen yet European artists break globally, or very few artists, US artists, break globally. If I take Chance the Rapper, for example, it's a good example. Chance the Rapper, if you look at the hip-hop market in the world, the largest hip-hop market in the world is the US. The second largest market in the world for hip-hop in volume numbers is France. When I look at the data for Chance the Rapper, the year Chance released his album, he ranked top 198 in France in our top streamed artist. He wasn't nowhere near the top. Why? Because there were 150 local artists that actually worked the French market very efficiently to radio, to social media, with specific campaigns. And so in order to be able to access global success, there's no secret. You need to work each market. So you need, which is why we've developed to have offices all around the world, because if you don't go to the local blogs, the local YouTube team, the local Deezer team, when you're Chance in France, and do the same in Germany, and do the same across the territories, you are not going to achieve the same level of success. So it's all about coordinating that work, and that work just not only requires putting out the music and playlists at Spotify, putting out video, but it also requires finding the proper artist collaborations to be able to introduce the artist to each market. And it does take time. We've seen some success with easier success in electronic music, where music flows faster. We had one artist last year that ranked, was in the top 50 of the most streamed artists worldwide on Spotify. His name is Petit Biscuit. Typical example, bedroom producer, put out one track, and then we worked for a year and a half to make it to that level of success with promo after promo in each territory. But I do think as the artist gets more structured, we will see more example of artists breaking.
Now, when I was surfing through your website, and among the many artists that appear in color and in black and white, one of the artists that caught me by surprise was actually Queen. How do you guys work with Queen? What's the relationship there?
It's actually, we've had a long relationship with Queen and Jim Beach, the manager, who was the manager of the band. Essentially, Jim approached us, I think 5 or 6 years ago, to handle all of the video distribution for Queen. He was unhappy. All of the audio catalog is licensed to Universal, and Jim at the time wanted to test us on building up the revenues on the video side where he was less satisfied. And essentially when we took over managing the YouTube channels, all of the video for Queen, the revenues that Queen was generating and the number of people following the YouTube channel for Queen was less than 200,000. So today I think we're nearing 3 million people that watch YouTube video, Queen videos on YouTube. We're generating 7-figure revenues for the band on that music videos through the expertise we've developed through YouTube there. And we think that applies with actually many more discussion with legacy artists, where what we see for a band like Queen, where Jim and the management team is very structured and very thoughtful about the approach. How do I approach synchronization? How do I approach keeping and developing further the Queen brand and introducing to new communities? YouTube is a key driver of how you do this. There's the biopic coming in November this year. The YouTube channel is going to be an important channel of how the movie is being promoted. So from movie to merch, the expertise you need there to develop these audiences is very important. How you monetize digital music, and that's actually allowed us now where we project manage or product manage the entire digital music for Queen, where we actually advise the management on what they should be doing or what Universal should be doing on Spotify, what it should be doing on the other services, so that they can extract the best value of the catalog.
Wow. So to kind of extend on this sort of case study on Queen, when you started Believe Digital, it essentially started as a distribution service. You've now moved on to actually acquire and launch record labels such as All Points. And then there are 2 other areas that, frankly, your competitors aren't really involved in, which is namely publishing and neighboring rights. And I was wondering if you could briefly talk about these sort of added value services that you provide to artists worldwide.
Well, the way we think about the services is really, when we have artists come to us, we try to provide the services that are the most adapted to what they need. Over the years, one of the things we've developed has been talent development. So taking artists, building artists from being unknown artists to being big local stars. And in those cases, the way we think about the artist, we think about the artist, we don't think about the music. So when we think about investment, say, all right, it's going to take us 2 3 years to make that artist, help develop the artist into being a local star, that's going to require a lot of investment. And so in those cases, we will typically invest on the artist and help the artist develop the recording side of the business, the publishing side of the business, the live side of the business. So depending on whether the artist is author and composer, we will work on the publishing side, and that's how we've built that publishing piece. The other foray we've done into publishing is through TuneCore, where we had a lot of artists come to us and asking us to actually provide a one-stop shop solution, which led us to developing a publishing service in the same way that we were offering a distribution service.
And so, you know, among the publishing and more importantly, the sync placements, what would you say would be some of the more higher profile commercials or movies or TV shows, let's just say for the sake of convenience, 3 that come to mind immediately, that people would be going, oh, I had no idea Believe had a hand in that. What are sort of the 3 kind of, later on cocktail party, if you had to drop 3 names of commercials that had Believe written all over it?
Well, we had, if I take artists that we're currently working on, we just had a big sick commercial for a Swedish young artist we're developing with McDonald's called Anna Leon, and she's been basically, she was the sync of, her music was sync on the main TV commercial. We now have, we're developing a big electronic music band called The Blaze. Just to give you an example, just in the past year only, we've not yet released the album. That band has released 3 tracks. Sync revenues represent more than 7 figures in revenues because it's we've an ability of building up sync relationship across the territories that helps us generate more opportunities and identify through technology, through our teams, the music that we think is more syncable. And so for a fraction of our artists where we think that makes sense, this is something that contributes to artist development as well as significantly to revenues.
And just to sort of wrap things up soon, I wanted to sort of take a step back before we step forward. But last year, in all the industry trades, there was rampant rumors in the market, in the press, about Believe possibly maybe walking down the aisle with Sony. What happened, and then more importantly, is moving forward, you know, because basically since 2018 is almost done and we have to start thinking about 2019, what are things that we should be on the lookout for related to Believe?
Well, since I created the company in 2005, and I think the company has been sold and bought probably 30 times without me knowing it. So once to Universal, once to Sony, once to Warner. And so, no, our focus is very simple. Like, the company has been profitable since 2009, and our target goal now is to accelerate our development across all of the territories. So we're going to announce in a couple of weeks a number of things we've been working on from an acquisition standpoint to actually strengthen our set of services in various genres of music in specific territories. So our path is very simple. It's continue doing what we've been doing consistently, keep training great people in all of the territories that we're operating, strengthening our team like here in Asia, where we want to hire more people, more expertise, deepen the services we're providing, marketing, promotion, management services, and where we do think that we can accelerate the buildup of their people that share our business ethics, the transparency, the mindset that being the best at serving artists, we will look at acquisition opportunities across the territories. And that's one thing that we're very actively looking for here in Asia because we think there's great opportunities in the market. We want to strengthen our setup. So our target goal is really to accelerate that build up here.
Great. We somehow managed to get it right on time, almost down to the second. Before we shut down, let's take 3 questions from the audience. So for any of you out there that might be on the fence, no pun intended, on whether or not you want to be a believer, 3 questions. Anybody. The light's kind of strong, so over here. Hold on, we're going to put you on the mic here.
Yeah.
It's daytime karaoke night. You got to step up to the mic.
Hi, I'm Hans-Peter from Music. The question is, you mentioned yourself in the beginning, your position in the pyramid, so to speak. And that pyramid is it whether it's 10, 90 or 95, 5 or whatever. Could you maybe tell us a bit about how Believe Music's artists place relatively to each other? I mean, is that a much broader, flatter kind of pyramid, or do you see the same kind of ratio as the rest of the business sees? And can you maybe tell us a bit about how you use that in your planning of your scalability, so to speak?
Yeah, the way sorry, I should have actually explained this better. The reason we see the industry as a pyramid is when you think about it, the horizontal axis of a pyramid is actually the number of artists on the market, and the vertical axis is actually how developed the artists are and the value-added services that you can provide to the artists. So that at the very bottom of the pyramid, you have a really large number of developing artists where you can provide a fully automated technology service like TuneCore, but unless you want to make a bet, you cannot dedicate a lot of engineering resources consulting. And at the very top of the pyramid, you have top Billboard charted artists that are generating a lot of revenues where you need to have a lot of value add on the creative side, on the marketing side. You need to do much more investment. So that's how we're thinking of the pyramid. And the reason we see it as a pyramid is that we see all the time artists moving up from developing artist status to mid-level artists to top artists. And so to give you an example, right now we sign across all of the territories we're operating. Every week we sign about 20 artists that started on TuneCore that we then sign on one of our labels because they reach a level of development where we think we can accelerate making them bigger artists by providing them more services. So that's really the idea. And the idea for us was really have a set of services that could cater to all of the artists. That's how we're thinking about it.
Next question. Right here. Best hair in the house. Hold on. Mike's coming right up.
Thank you for that. Two-tier question. My first question was, what do you think is your main point of difference to the major labels, and what sort of things are you developing that the major labels are not developing at the moment?
I think the major labels have focused a model that only caters to the very top of the pyramid. They're not set up to provide services to the mid-level market of artists or to the developing artist market. And so I'd say that's really not the same thing that you need. I'd say that's the service distinction. And then I would say there's a cultural distinction, which is in our model, the focus has always been what we've always believed in is that in transparency. And what I mean by transparency is it's not just transparency on royalty accounting. It's transparency on data. It's and generally it's about what I call making our artists and labels smarter. So I've always considered that we're providing services. The smarter our artists are, the smarter our labels are, the more they will develop and the more we will benefit, which I think is a slightly different philosophy at major record labels about what information do I make available, because the more information you make available, the more of your own power you take away and you put in the hands of the artist. And I think the path of the world is to go in a direction, in a market that's much more transparent, artist-friendly than what it has been in the past. So that's the cultural difference.
Okay. You slipped in 2 questions, so that technically qualifies as 3, but if anyone's got one, okay, we're done. But if you have any more questions, very easy to find, and more importantly, thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you for coming out.
Thank you.